I'm Huon Hooke, and this is The Real Review, and I'm speaking to Vanya Cullen, who is the chief winemaker and co-proprietor of the Cullen Winery in Margaret River, in Williabra, Margaret River, which of course is one of the great leaders of biodynamic viticulture and winemaking in the country. It's also a carbon positive winery. They do everything by absolutely highest standards as far as the environment goes. And Vanya is the chief winemaker, and she took over from her mother, who was the chief winemaker before her. It's a very womanly business, Cullen. And I notice you've named not only your top Cabernet Merlot after your mother, which is Diana Madeline, but you now have a Semillon Sauvignon Blanc named after your grandmother, which is Grace Madeline. It's a very woman-centric winery, isn't it? Why is that?
Well, I think it's interesting. It's just how it's ended up being, really. I mean, Mum, back in the early days, before Williabra or Margaret River was well known, we couldn't get anyone to come and make the wine. So Mum took over the winemaking, and I think that also happened in the war, didn't it? In 1945, that all the men went to war and the women had to take over. So I think we also have a wine named after my father, Kevin John, which is our top Chardonnay. So it's a bit of a quality there, Huon.
Yes.
It's also interesting because I'd like to acknowledge the Wadandi people, the traditional custodians of the land where our wines are made, with respect, elders past, present, and emerging. And they say that this country that we're on is women's country, and it's women's country because it's easier, it's about foraging more than hunting, whereas out in the desert it's more men's country. So that's I didn't know that. We didn't know that before creating a name after Grace Madeline or Mum, but it's a nice tie-in to that. And all surrounding our winery are peppermint trees, or wanang trees, which are also trees that are women's trees in terms of the usage of what they are used for. So it's nice. It's a nice connection to land or country, and having the country talk to you as well, and being part of that biodynamic, being certified biodynamic and carbon positive. I suppose biodynamics is about connection and energy, and that energy comes through the land that is driven through the microbes that we put on, and we only need really to put that on because we've used conventional, not much, but the land has been farmed conventionally, so we need to reactivate that through the microbes in preparation 500. So it's actually rather lovely. I think that the earth, the mother, the divine feminine, which is in everyone, Huon.
Was there one wine that really turned your head when you were much younger and starting out?
Yes. No, actually I suppose the wine that alerted me to wow, wine is incredible, was two wines. Was a 1976 Esches. I was at a wine show lunch, somehow jagged a gig at the one when I was a student at university studying zoology, at a wine show lunch at what was then the establishment in Perth, and everyone was competing, as they do, for the best wines to buy. And so someone brought out a 1976 Esches, and I remember thinking distinctly that, and then of course you have that, and then you have to move on to the next 10 wines. And I can remember thinking, I don't want to finish drinking this wine because it's so wonderful. And I think that was one, and also Chateau d'Yquem. But in terms of wines that have rocked my world, Cabernet-wise, was the 1865 Lafite. I think that's truly the most remarkable wine that I've ever tasted, and apparently the quantity of Malbec in that wine is of significance with respect to what we do with our Diana Madeline. And I think it's just any great wine is a wine of influence. But I do remember that, and I remember my mother bought me for my birthday, back when they were cheap, a 1959 Margot, which which also was very formative in terms of my, just that, I suppose that, wow, sitting with those wines and understanding that transporting nature of great wine and how it truly does take you to another place and time. Fantastic.
One, we're just about out of time, but one quick answer from this one, if you could. Of all the wines that you make, is there a personal favourite?
There's a personal favourite for every season. I think, and also it changes. You know how sometimes you feel like drinking, Cabernet, and sometimes you feel like drinking, Chardonnay or Riesling. So it does change, and all of our, I suppose you're talking about our wines. So all of our flagships, the Kevin John Legacy, and the Diana Madeline and the Vanyas. I love varietal Cabernet in its own. And I think that the influence of the amphora on those wines is really takes them. I love wines that take you to the place, and that wine takes you to that place. And the more that they become artisanal in nature and, one-offs to do with a particular time and place on this planet, it becomes quite magical. And any of those wines that have those characters are my favourites.
Thank you very much for talking to us, Vanya Cullen. Congratulations being one of the top wineries of the Real Review for 2021. It's been great talking to you. Vanya Cullen, Chief Winemaker, co-proprietor of Cullen Winery, Margaret River. Thank you.
And thank you. Oh, and thank you, Huon, for asking me to come and talk and for selecting us as one of the top wineries.